The winter wind cut through the narrow alleys of the old neighborhood like a silent predator. In a crumbling one-room house at the end of the lane lived 12-year-old Arav with his mother and younger sister. The paint had long peeled off their walls, and the roof leaked whenever the sky decided to cry. Poverty had become such a permanent guest in their lives that it no longer knocked before entering. Arav's father had passed away 2 years earlier after a brief illness. Since then, his mother stitched clothes late into the night under a dim bulb. Her tired eyes squinting at fabric she could barely afford to waste. Some nights she skipped dinner so her children could eat. Arav knew this, even though she pretended she had already eaten at work. Every morning before school, Arav delivered newspapers. After school, he helped at a tea stall washing glasses for a few coins. Despite the exhaustion that clung to him like dust, he carried something rare in his heart: kindness. Not the loud kind that demands applause, but the quiet kind that grows silently in the dark. One particularly cold evening, Arav was returning home with a small packet of rice he had bought with his day's earnings. It wasn't much, but it meant dinner. As he turned the corner, he noticed an elderly man sitting on the pavement near the closed grocery shop. The man's clothes were torn, his hands trembling from the cold. People passed by without a glance. Some even stepped around him as if he were an obstacle. Arav slowed down. The voice in his mind reminded him, "We barely have enough." But another voice, softer, stronger, whispered, "What if he hasn't eaten at all?" Arav approached him. "Grandpa, are you okay?" he asked gently. The old man looked up, surprised that someone had noticed him. "Just tired, son," he replied weakly. "Haven't eaten since yesterday." Arav felt his throat tighten. He looked at the packet of rice in his hands. It was supposed to feed 3 hungry stomachs tonight. He stood there for a moment that felt like a lifetime. Then, without overthinking, he placed the packet in the old man's lap. "Please eat this," Arav said. "I'll manage." The old man's eyes filled with tears. "But what about you?" Arav smiled. "We'll be fine." He walked home that night with empty hands and a racing heart. When he told his mother what he had done, he expected disappointment. Instead, she pulled him into her arms. "You gave what we didn't even have," she whispered, her voice breaking. "That makes you richer than most." They drank water and went to bed hungry that night. Yet strangely, Arav felt full of something he couldn't explain. The next morning, as Arav delivered newspapers, he noticed a car parked near the tea stall. It was unlike any vehicle that had ever entered their narrow street: polished, expensive, commanding attention. The elderly man from the previous night stepped out. But he was not alone. 2 well-dressed men accompanied him. His appearance was transformed: clean clothes, firm posture, no trace of helplessness. Arav froze. The old man smiled warmly. "I've been looking for you." It turned out he was Mr. Mehra, a wealthy businessman who had lost his way the previous evening after visiting a property nearby. His phone battery had died, and he had chosen to sit quietly and observe how people treated a man they thought was homeless. "Many walked past me," Mr. Mehra said. "Some even insulted me. You were the only one who stopped." Arav lowered his eyes, embarrassed. "You gave away your dinner," Mr. Mehra continued. "Why?" Arav shrugged. "You needed it more." Those 4 words struck deeper than any grand speech ever could. Mr. Mehra visited Arav's home that afternoon. He met his mother, saw their living conditions, and listened to their story. There was no pity in his eyes, only respect. "I believe kindness reveals character," he said, "and character deserves opportunity." Within a week, everything began to change. Mr. Mehra arranged for Arav to attend one of the best schools in the city on a full scholarship. He provided financial support for the family and helped Arav's mother set up a small tailoring shop with proper equipment. What once took her an entire night could now be completed in hours. But the most important thing he gave Arav wasn't money. It was belief. Belief that his circumstances did not define his future. Belief that poverty was a chapter, not the whole story. Arav worked harder than ever before. He woke up early to study, stayed up late to practice, and never forgot the value of what he had been given. Years passed, and the boy who once delivered newspapers went on to top his class, earn a university scholarship, and eventually become a successful social entrepreneur. But success did not harden him. If anything, it softened him further, and he started a foundation dedicated to supporting underprivileged children, providing education, mentorship, and meals. He ensured that no child would have to choose between kindness and survival the way he once did. At the inauguration of his foundation's new community center, Arav stood at the podium, his mother seated proudly in the front row. Mr. Mehra, older now but smiling brightly, sat beside her. Reporters asked him what inspired his journey. Arav paused before answering. Years ago, he began, I gave away a packet of rice to a stranger. That night, my family went to bed hungry. But that act taught me something powerful. When you give from your scarcity, not your abundance, you don't lose. You grow. He looked at the children sitting before him, children who reminded him of himself. Kindness is never wasted, he continued. Sometimes it returns as an opportunity, sometimes as a blessing. But it always returns as strength. The hall erupted in applause, but Arav's eyes found his mother's. In them he saw the same pride and love that had carried him through their darkest nights. Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Arav walked through the neighborhood where he had grown up. The alley was still narrow, the buildings still worn. But something had changed, not just in the place, but in what it represented. It was no longer a symbol of limitation. It was the birthplace of transformation. He stopped at the corner where he had once handed over his dinner. He could almost see his younger self standing there, unsure but brave. One small decision, one quiet act, and one moment of choosing compassion over comfort. That was all it took. We often wait for grand opportunities to change our lives, a big break, a miracle, a stroke of luck. But sometimes the turning point arrives disguised as a simple choice. To help, to care, to give. Arav did not know that night that he was shaping his destiny. He did not expect a reward. He acted because it felt right. And that is the real lesson. Kindness is not a strategy. It is a reflection of who we are. In a world where people measure wealth by what they keep, true wealth lies in what we are willing to give. Arav's life changed because he chose compassion when it was inconvenient. His family's future transformed because he refused to let poverty shrink his heart. One act of kindness changed his life, and that of his poor family. And somewhere tonight, in some forgotten corner of the world, another child stands at a similar crossroads, with something small in their hand, with hunger in their stomach, with doubt in their mind. May they choose kindness, because sometimes the smallest gift carries the greatest miracle.